Hey everyone, welcome to the Oasis podcast. I'm your host, Miss AJ. Thanks for tuning in. An oasis is something that provides refuge, relief, or a pleasant contrast, and that is exactly what you will find tuning into the Oasis podcast. This is a space where I and special guests will be cultivating intentional and honest conversations about life's journey. Subscribe everywhere you listen to podcasts and watch us on YouTube now. Wouldn't you love to create your own personal oasis? What is an oasis, you ask? An oasis is something that provides refuge, relief, or a pleasant contrast, and that is exactly what you will find at AJO Consulting Services, LLC. AJO Consulting Services is a company that provides individuals, communities, and businesses of color with coaching and consulting services, personal and professional development, as well as social and community connection services. These services include, but are not limited to, dating, life, relationship, and business coaching, finance management, travel experience curation, wellness navigation, and much more. Are you ready to find, connect, and release? Come experience your oasis today. Visit our website to learn more at www.ajoconsultingservices.com. Follow us on Facebook at AJO Consulting and Instagram at AJO Consult. Also, email us at info@ajoconsultingservices.com. Hey, y'all. Welcome back to the Oasis podcast. Thank you for joining me for another episode. All right. So, from the last episode, you guys found out that I am pregnant. Very much so pregnant. Very, very pregnant. I am 6 months, but when you guys see this, I'll probably already have given birth. So I am having a baby girl, and get all that good stuff out the way already. I want to drop a disclaimer, okay? I am 100% grateful. I know that I am blessed. However, this will not be an episode talking about all the wonders and beauties of pregnancy, because that would not be truthful for me, okay? I'm going to talk about kind of how pregnancy has been going, my thoughts, my feelings, the mental, the emotional, all that other good stuff, the physical. But as of right now, my thoughts about pregnancy, it is 0 stars. I would not recommend it. And this is coming from someone who is in their mid-30s. I am established. I make good money. I have a roof over my head. I'm stable. I'm in a relationship. All the things. And I don't think this is something I want to do again. It's not enjoyable for me. I don't like feeling the way I've been feeling, and I'll detail some of that stuff. And again, you guys will see me looking at my phone, because pregnancy brain is real. So many things I don't remember. I'll be forgetting things mid-thought. Okay, so don't judge me. All right, don't judge me. Okay, so let's go back. So last episode, I told you guys we did IUI. So the IUI happened end of August. However, I'll explain this. I mean, I can say it now, but even though we had inkling before, but I don't even think the IUI was necessary. Okay. Because, we were doing adult things, a lot of adult things. And so, anyway, IUI was done. You have to wait like 2 weeks before. It's called a 2-week wait. And you have to wait essentially for either your period to come or you go get tested to see if you're pregnant or not. This time around, like I was kind of explaining, like I was like, yo, it happened. All right. It don't happen. All right. Because I was ready to be like, you know what?
Because like I told you, I took a break in between the IUIs and I was traveling. I was just chilling and really just enjoying myself, my life, the way I was before without this like extra stressor. So I was kind of like, I'm not fit to be stressed out about this. Like, it's just not happening. Also, there was like transitioning happening at work, which I wasn't like trying to stress me out per se, but it was unpleasant. Like, who likes transition, right? So, was dealing with those things. So I just was like, I'm just not fit to stress myself. I'm not going to be doing all the extra little crazy things that I did previously. And those of us, or those of you who have been through the process of IVF or IUI or just trying to get pregnant and like consciously trying to get pregnant, it can be very draining, like waiting, oh, is my cycle gonna come? And every little symptom, is this that? And looking up things. And I said, no, I ain't doing it. But I also said to myself, this fit to be it, because I just couldn't see myself doing IVF. Went through all the trainings. They make you go through like, at least, I don't know if when I say they, I don't know if every place does this, but my place did, and make you go through like a training explaining what it is and what the process is going to look like. And, just prepping you essentially in case that's what's going to happen. Because that was technically what the next step was going to be. And I I said I was open to it and I would do it, if need be. But honestly, there was a voice inside of me like, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing it. Like, I'm not doing it. And that's mainly because I don't like meds. I damn sure don't like needles. And it's going to be so much of both. And I was like, look here, I don't know if I could do it. Like, I literally would sit through the trainings or the conversations and be like, my face is like, okay. But in my head, I'm like, nope, no, I'm not doing it. So I honestly feel God heard me. Them ancestors was like, all right, girl, all right. And this is why they blessed us this go around, because I honestly don't think I would have did it. I really don't think. Or I would have like been like, okay, this is what we gotta do. All right. And just waited another who knows, 6 months or so, because it just felt like too much for me. It really did feel like too much for me. So now this 2 week is happening. Now I mentioned last episode I had an ear infection. The week prior to doing the IUI, I was on antibiotics. And again, me and meds don't rock, but if I got to, I'll do it. This infection was like, oh my God, like it hurt. It was crazy. Let me rephrase that. I don't recall ever having an ear infection that I can remember. So maybe as a child or something. But this joint just was really uncomfortable. So of course I took these meds. Took the antibiotics. Was taking antibiotics. I usually get symptoms on antibiotics. So, taking the antibiotics and making sure I was taking my probiotics to balance it out, because antibiotics tend to mess my system up. And so I wanted to make sure that was balanced out. And so I know at this time I'm on antibiotics. I end up getting the IUI literally the day after I finish my antibiotics. But even after you finish, it still lingers in your system. So I'm like, okay. And so while I was on the antibiotics, I think I was having some symptoms. Like, what was I having? I don't know if I was having stomach issues just yet, but I feel like I was having symptoms. I don't remember 100% exactly what they were. It might have been some headache. Yeah, let me double check. Like I told y'all, my brain ain't good, y'all. I was having like a little bit of headache, just I don't know if I was having stomach issues at this point. But anyway, it lingers, right? It usually takes a few days or like a day, like 24 hours, 48 hours, depending on the type of antibiotic, to hit your system, then your body is going to react to this. And so by this point, towards the end of the cycle of antibiotics, typically for me at least, that's when I like really start to feel stuff. And so that's happening. Get the IUI done. But remember, I also had to take a trigger shot, which was like 24 hours before the 24 or 48 hours, something like that, before the IUI. All these things have side effects. So I'm feeling like cramping. I'm feeling like my head is hurting, like random headaches. And so the different things. But I'm also being cognizant of this. Like, you're going to be feeling stuff, girl. Just relax. Okay. Like, and I was make sure to keep myself very even. We're not going to be all like, oh, what is this symptom? Da, da, da. So after I get the IUI done, I made sure this time not to play myself. Did not go to work. So I stayed home, relaxed, literally came home, got my favorite foods, kicked my feet up, and relaxed. And I was cool with that. It was wonderful. I would want to say now I'm going to look because this takes a little bit of time. And so for the day of the IUI and like 2 days following, I had like bad cramping. Like, it didn't feel good. Like, I'm just like, okay, maybe it's the trigger shot, because the trigger shot causes cramping. And, I was like, all right, and my doctor was like, all right, just take some Tylenol if it's uncomfortable. So I was like, okay, cool. I ain't gonna, I'm gonna let it rock. Then the headaches were happening, and I was kind of like, all right, again, uncomfortable, but not like unbearable. And so I'm like, all right, no issues. No, it's fine. Nope, we can do. Now this is gonna get a little TMI, okay? So we grown. And I also then started realizing that I needed to poop more often. Now, I was on antibiotics. Antibiotics, they don't just target one area. So it'll impact your whole system. So I'm like, okay, that tends to happen. I'm like, all right. And I've been on my probiotics. I'm like, okay, I'm going a little more often. Fine. All right. So now this is like going on a week since the IUI. And now I'm noticing like, oh, was it this week? Or maybe starting the next week. Now I'm starting that second week of the wait, right? And I'm starting to notice, like, not even notice, because it took me a while to realize, but like my regular going to work, getting, coming, because I work in a city, coming home, I'm noticing like my ass is out of breath, like wild, like, like, and I'm like, this don't make no sense because I've been working out. You feel me? So I'm like, if I'm going upstairs, I feel like I can't breathe. Now I have asthma, but it's not bad. It's usually allergy induced. It's usually worse in the summertime. And by this point, it's like, it's like still early September. It's not blazing hot, but it just didn't make sense. Like, this is what I'm saying. Like, it was just kind of like, damn, like, I need to step up my workout game. Like, what's going on? Like, why can't I breathe? But it wasn't like clicking per se. I'm thinking, damn, okay, maybe I need to step this up. Maybe let me step up my cardio, whatever. I'm like, all right, cool. But that was happening. I had to use my pump more often than I usually, and I'm like, weird. Then I started like getting gassy. Okay, so burping, inverting. Again, though, I'm thinking it's the antibiotics. But at this point, I stopped taking my probiotics. So my probiotics, I didn't take every day. I was taking, like, when I was on antibiotics, I took them every day. When I got off the antibiotics, I took it, like, I was taking it daily, maybe another day or two after I finished the antibiotics. And then I kind of stopped taking it every day. So it was a little strange now. This is like a week later. I'm like, why am I so gassy? Like, I'm not eating things that make me this gassy. So I'm not understanding why I'm so gassy. Then I was noticing, so I stopped really taking antibiotics, but I started just eating yogurt. Like, not just started, but I eat yogurt. So that's how I kind of balance it out. I have to take the pills. I'll just eat my Greek yogurt. And I'm noticing after eating my yogurt, after having anything that's like cheese related, like mozzarella cheese, which I love, I was getting heartburn. And I don't get heartburn like that. Like, it's not really something that often happens. But I was noticing after I eat these things, like milk-based products, I was getting heartburn. And I was like, "Ugh, this is wildly uncomfortable. I don't like that." Like, but I was kind of still like, all right, like not really paying attention. Again, I'm in my head going, this is maybe still remnants of the antibiotic. Because at this point, my stomach started to just act a little funny. Not like crazy. Like I said, I was gassy and stuff like that. Not crazy, crazy off, but it was acting a little funny. So I'm like, oh, maybe this is a gastrointestinal issue because I used to have really bad gastrointestinal issues. So I had like years ago, maybe at this point, maybe 6 years ago. So I had, I was told I had IBS, all that stuff. I just changed my diet and I just, monitored when I ate, like what I was eating. And I had been fine for years. Well, that's not true. That one year I went to Mexico, I got traveler's gut, fucked me up a little bit. But then after that, I was good. And it was at that point, had been like 4 years that I was straight. Like I had no real issues like with my gastrointestinal in that way. So I'm like, this is not making sense. It's uncomfortable. I'm like, I'm not eating anything out the norm that I usually wouldn't eat that might be triggering or whatever the case is. So I'm like, what the heck is going on? But it's still not like enough for me to just be like, because again, I was keeping it cool. I wasn't trying to stress about this getting tested thing. I'm like, look, I'm gonna just wait till I have this appointment. At this point, my appointment was already scheduled, and just gonna wait. So let me make sure I am telling y'all the truth. Okay. So I missed an important point. So at this point, 29, 30, 31. Okay. So after you do an IUI, they test your progesterone levels because they want to make sure your body produces enough progesterone in the event that you are, well, let me make that, because some women don't produce enough progesterone, and that could be the reason why, right? They aren't maintaining or sustaining their pregnancy. Progesterone that's never been my issue, but it is it's a common practice. And so about a week after the IUI, like if a week after you have your procedure, they'll check your progesterone levels to see, are they rising how they're supposed to be? If they're not, then that means there might be an issue. So I went in like normally, they draw blood, check the progesterone levels. I don't actually, this is my third time doing IUI, and it was kind of fourth time going through this process in the fertility clinic because we did timed intercourse last time. So I don't even typically ask about my numbers. Like, I don't know. I just don't. I don't know. It's weird. But I just let them run the blood. And the nurse calls you and be like, okay, your levels are good, or da da da. And I'm like, all right, cool. Then I just go about my business. And I feel like, again, because they be tracking you on your phone. I feel like I was on YouTube or something, and something popped up, and I was watching something about a woman who tried to get pregnant, and she got IUI, and then she said something about, checking her numbers and stuff. And I was like, I never called to ask about my numbers. And I was like, oh, maybe I should ask them, like. And so I was like, let me call them and ask. So I called and I spoke to the clinic, and then I asked them for, my current numbers, but then the numbers in the past. I never did that before. And so then I'm like, oh, now I have these numbers in front of me. And I'm like, okay. So I look up what are the normal ranges supposed to be. And then I look at my numbers. But I do also remember my nurse saying when she did give me my last numbers, she said, oh, the numbers look really good. Right. And she was just like, yeah, she said the numbers look really good. So I said, oh, okay. I'm still not registering. But when I called back and I got the actual, different numbers from my other cycles, and this time she was like, the numbers are, the numbers are high, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're pregnant. And I'm like, all right, cool. And so I looked up the ranges, and it was true because my numbers fell within the range of still just normal cycle, your normal menstrual cycle numbers, but it was on the higher end of it. And the thing I noticed though, it was higher than it's been before. You know what I mean? And so I'm like, oh, okay. Like now I'm like, okay, we're not gonna stress out though. We're not gonna act all crazy and shit, right? And still not connecting the things that I was feeling with pregnancy, because these are not things you normally hear, right? At least for me. I didn't normally hear all these gastrointestinal and blah blah blah. Like, so I'm thinking these antibiotics done jack me up again, and I just need to let my body regulate itself and get itself together. So now, so now it is, like I said, within the second week of waiting, and I feel like, yeah, things were just moving normal again. I was getting the headaches more often. And so now, after knowing these numbers and stuff, and now I'm getting these headaches and stuff, and I'm like, I think something is up, you know? And I was like, still was like, I don't know if I should test. I'm like, I don't want to get disappointed. I don't want to get my feelings hurt. And also, it was still like technically too early to test. Like, again, you go on YouTube, you can find women who tested super early and they found out, yada, yada. And part of me was like, I don't know if I want to put myself in this predicament. What I did do though, and again, I think after that, watching that one video with this lady, again, I looked at my numbers and I went back and looked at, matter of fact, that's not even true. What actually triggered me, I was thinking about, all right, moving forward with my cycle, because, that whole Roe versus Wade had been upturned, and hearing these apps are like tracking your cycles and can sell your information to see if you pregnant, all kind of stuff. I said, oh no. So I had a a period tracking app that I deleted. So I'm like, I'm not doing that. Y'all not getting my information. Y'all not doing that. Like, yes, I live in New York, but who knows, right? Like, you never know what could happen. So I was like, nope. So I'm like, oh, back to the old school way in your planner, tracking your cycles and all that. And so I had time that day. Sometimes I just be doing random stuff like that. So I literally went back from a year in my planner, looking at my different cycles to track how long my cycles are, my days and stuff like that, which is good information to have. Like, why not, right? Because I hadn't done that for years, like since I was younger. So I'm like, oh, let me track my cycles. And so that's what I decided to do. I went back. Oh, okay, this cycle was this amount of days. All right, this cycle was that amount of days. And one year, my cycles were like really long. They're like 30 some days. And then literally the following year, they got shorter, but they were consistently shorter, and they have been consistently the same for that previous year. So I'm like, all right, cool. So I'm tracking. All right, it's been this many days, that many days, yada, yada, yada. And then, of course, during this time I'm tracking cycles, I had IUIs. And I'm like, okay, yep, my cycle came exactly when it was supposed to come. Yep, yeah. And then I'm counting, and I'm like, my cycle should have been here already. And I don't know how that missed that, because at least for me, when you're so used to getting your cycles and they're regular, like my cycles, let's say if it was on the second last month, and it's usually on the second the next month. Well, not even a second, but like I would know, like you would feel it, but it usually falls as very close in range, right? Like for me, for whatever reason, it's typically a day off or something like that, not usually more than that. And so I'm like, and again, I'm dealing with these gastrointestinal things, not paying attention exactly. And I was having like cramping, but it subsided. They weren't really like menstrual cramping. But I'm like, okay, I have all this stuff in my system still. So I'm like, oh, okay. And, typically it lingers for a little bit. And so I'm like, I guess I didn't notice, or maybe I just did and just was like, didn't pay much attention to the fact that like my symptoms weren't exactly the same. But in my head though, I'm thinking, oh, I'm gonna go to the, my cycle's supposed to come on yada yada day. But that was when I'm supposed to have a 30-day cycle or something like that. And I'm like, oh no. Looking back, literally, my cycles have only been 27 days or 28 days. I'm like, I should have definitely had my cycle. I think at that point, I should have had my cycle, I think the day before or that same day. It might have been that same day. And at this point, it was like almost 10 o'clock at night. So I'm like, that shit should have came worse. My body is very clockwork, like clockwork. I feel when my cycle's gonna come. Like I be knowing, like that's just how it is. It's been like that for years. So I'm like, there's no feeling that something is coming now. You know what I'm saying? And I'm like, okay, I caved in. At this point, it's been 10 days past. So it's counted DPO, days past ovulation. But again, my ovulation was timed and I know how that falls. So technically it was 10 days past my ovulation. And technically it was like 9 days after I did the IUI. So I'm like, I'm not expecting anything. Honestly, I'm not expecting anything, but I'm just like, let's just make sure I'm not bugging. Maybe my cycle is changing up again. I'm not gonna play myself. And because I was supposed to get blood tested 3 days out, in 3 days. So I'm like, all right, it might just come some other day. I'm like, all right. Took the test. It was one of those, 1-minute tests. I think first response that I just had in my cabinets from like the previous times, of trying. And I took it. The minute came, no line. All right, not pregnant. Put it back in a little baggie, toss it in the trash. I'm like, all right, I guess my cycle is just maybe because of the antibiotics again, whatever. It's just doing its own thing. All right. So I decided, I think, I stayed up for a little while, then decided to go to bed. And then later on, I don't know, sometime early morning, I don't know, something was just like, look at that test again. And so I did, and I pulled the test out, and like you can see like a faint second line. I was just like, and of course, we go to Google, you look it up, you look stuff up, and they're like, oh, that can happen. Like, if it's been sitting there for a while, it can happen. So I'm like, all right, bet. No worries. So now I'm like, okay. Another 2 days go by, and this is now the day before I'm supposed to go to the doctor, and I still don't get my period. That ain't normal. Like now I'm like, where my period at? You know what I mean? Like it's just not normal for me, for real. And so now I'm like, all right. This time I took like a little cheapo test, I mean, that shit wasn't $1, but you typically could get them for $1. And I'm like, all right, because I wasn't fit to be paying no extra money, especially knowing I'm going to the doctor tomorrow. So I think I went to work and bought them, and then I waited till I got home. And again, I'm still having these other symptoms, short of breath. My stomach now is acting wild. like I'm getting, some bad gastrointestinal pains and stuff. So I'm like, all right, wait till I get home. I take this. And now I see the line. It's faint, but it was a little darker than the one from before. I'm like, oh shit. I'm like, okay, chill out. We're gonna relax because false positives do happen. And so I'm like, all right, bitch, we're gonna breathe, you know, you know. Like I looked at it, it was like, oh wow, oh shit. All right. And then I literally was like, all right, just relax. Let's wait for this tomorrow. Tomorrow comes, I take a blood test at the doctor's office. I'm like, all right. And then again, I'm at work, right? I'm at work at this point. So I go to work, excuse me, I go to work afterwards. It's like early morning appointments. So typically, which kind of like, I don't know, kind of sucks, I guess. Because that's what happened last time is you go to your appointments and then like you're waiting for hours or whatever. Because they're like, oh, I'll call you before 12, whatever, for news. And so you're kind of like waiting, kind of anticipating the phone call, right? Because the phone call, they call you regardless. But is that true? Yes, I think they call you regardless. It might have been one time they sent a message, but I feel like it was mostly calls. So they call you regardless if it's good news or bad news. So it's like waiting for the phone call to be like, all right, your heart is like, So waiting for the phone call, and I get the phone call. But this time it's my doctor. She doesn't call. It's usually the nurse that calls. So I'm just like, So she was like, oh, she was like, I just wanted to share your results with you. She was like, but you might know by this point. I'm like, And she was like, so the test was positive. And I was like, oh, wow. So I'm at work hearing this news. I'm like, oh, okay, And it was a feeling of like, oh, wow, I did it. And also like a feeling of like, oh, wow, I did it. And then we talk about the next steps of like, all right, you come in, blah, blah, blah. So I have these numbers here, so I'm assuming that I asked them for it. And so at this point, like my numbers are clearly showing, okay, yeah, something's going on here. And so after you get a positive test, you have to come in for them to keep checking to make sure your levels rise. And I think, here it's showing in 2 days. So 2 days after, I had to come in to make sure my progesterone is still rising and that HCG, which is like they call it the pregnancy hormone, is also increasing. It should have doubled from the first time that they checked. That tells you that the pregnancy is still like growing essentially, because you can have a chemical pregnancy, but if the numbers go down, that means okay, the body's gonna technically expel it, aka abort it. So you gotta check the numbers are going. And so 2 days later, numbers absolutely doubled, more than doubled. And it was like, okay, wow, this is happening. And so in between that time, I saw my partner and we're both kind of just like, now mind you, we both consciously made this decision and we both fully aware no one was hoodwinked. And we're both like, oh. And that's what's crazy to me, because I'm like, can you imagine people who weren't even trying or didn't want to have a kid? Granted, if you was doing certain things, you should know that that's a possibility. But just having that feeling and how strong the feeling was just like, wow. Like, I don't know. I guess I wasn't expecting it to be like, oh, this is real. You know what I mean? And like I mentioned early in this episode, I'm in my mid-30s. I'm stable. And, like there's nothing life-wise that should be like, you can't do this. Oh my God, like this is gonna be so. And I still was kind of like, oh, shit.
Thank you for tuning into this week's episode of the Oasis podcast. I hope you were able to find something that resonated with you on your journey. Don't forget to subscribe anywhere you listen to podcasts and YouTube. Rate us and leave us a review and comment on Apple Podcasts, iTunes, and YouTube. Share your favorite episode and like us on Instagram and Facebook. If you have any questions, comments, want to be a guest, or any show ideas, contact us at ajaysoasis@gmail.com. That's AAYJAYSOASIS@gmail.com, or direct message us on Instagram and Facebook.